Hi, I'm Jim Bergeron, pastor at Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Houston, Texas. And this is the sermon for Pentecost, the 8th Sunday of Pentecost in the A series, July the 23rd. God was observing the earth and he thought, things look really messy there. So he assigned some angels to go on an inspection tour. They came back to report 95% of the people were bad, and 5% of the people were good. God was astounded and asked if they all agreed. They said it's unanimous. Society is in an uproar. Chaos is reigning supreme. Injustice and immorality were rife. What was called truth changed every day. Everyone did whatever they wanted. And only about 5% of the people, they said, were trying to make a positive difference to build up the church and society. God said, oh, my, such bad news. Let's send a letter of encouragement, a little note to tell the 5% how much we appreciate what they're doing, and some hints to keep them going while they're under all the stress of an evil world. And you know what that letter said? Yeah, I didn't get one either. How do we know the difference between good seed and weed seed, between desired plants and undesired? I grew up on a farm. We had a drop seeder. It had two 8-foot bins, which made for a 16-foot implement. They were mounted on wheels with 16 nozzles under each bin that the seed would fall through into the ground, 32 furrows at a time. In front of each nozzle was a steel prong that opened a small furrow into which the seeds fell. Behind each seed funnel was a small wheel that pressed the sown seed into the soil. There was a platform all the way across the back of the machine where the operator rode, making sure that the seeding process went according to plan. So Dad drove the tractor. I rode the seeder. The bins were filled with the best seed wheat from the year before, and I had extra bags on the platform. At the beginning of a row, Dad would take off. I would drop the prongs into the soft earth and open the slide so that the bins would drop the seed through the nozzles into the furrows at a preset rate, according to the speed of the tractor and the drop rate of seed through the funnel. I had to make sure the seed was dropping regularly, like sand, in an hourglass, and the bins didn't run out. It could be a busy ride on a cool autumn day. By the next spring, the grain was 20 inches tall. Occasionally, there would be a taller clump, slightly darker than the wheat, volunteer barley, mostly from birds flying over the field and cross-contaminating with grains from other fields. The barley ripens sooner. It will ruin your wheat yield. I got a penny a clump to pull it up. It was possible since it was sowed in rows, not broadcast, but I still had to stand on the wheat roots on either side of a barley clump to pull it up gently without pulling up the wheat. Really wasn't a very pleasant way to spend a hot May morning. It would be an evil person who would even think of broadcasting and seeding a rival grain or a noxious weed into a planted field. The crop would be a total loss. A small farm might even fail. Revenge couldn't possibly compensate for that kind of a loss. Indignation? Definitely. Rip up those bad weeds in anger, but that will ruin your livelihood. Life is a mixed bag of wheat and weeds. This parable is one of judgment and warning. It would be nice to get rid of all the weeds as soon as possible, but if you do that, you may destroy the best stuff that you need. We are cautioned concerning judging the situations of our lives prematurely and then acting immaturely. After all, God's in charge of the field. Jesus says, let it go. God will take care of the harvest of both the weeds and the wheat, and each will have a mission. The Greek word there is aphesis. It means to release from bondage or imprisonment, to exercise forgiveness or pardon, to let go. From the cross, Jesus uses the word aphesis, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Let it go. Somehow it's part of the plan. Forgiveness doesn't change the past. Forgiveness changes the future. Matthew's earlier parable, the sower and the seed, helps with context here. The soil is very important. Weeds will grow fastest in malnourished soil and then die out quickly. On the other hand, the strength of good seed and a strong plant will overcome weeds. There are many ways that God can handle those weedy patches in life. My imagination can only conceive of one solution, which is along the lines of let her rip. God, of course, has an infinite number of better options, and he'll pick the best one for us, unless, of course, we insist on our own way. Don't seize equality with God in your judgments. Jesus says, let it go. That seems counterintuitive. These days of being proactive, as we enter a liminal space to uptick our great pivot into a more substantive narrative reset and follow the science, to avoid the unprecedented evil baked into our unconscionable culture. Sorry, that was a rant. For all the wise judges of wokeness, featuring all the gobbledygook, hackneyed, trite catchphrases of those who would fix civilization by judging and destroying it. Take all those weedy words out of all the newscasts and district-level church communications, and what you get is moving lips, like an Ivy League student trying to read a comic book. I can only hope this gospel could flatten the curve with a new metric of tolerance and grace. Frankly, I prefer to think of myself as being in the nice plant, non-weed group. And Jesus points out the pitfalls of my metric. Maybe it's hard for us to tell the difference between weeds and wheat in our own lives and in others. Perhaps we have good crops of both in our own experience. We have doubts. We have certainties. I have had to learn to distrust and review my certainties and test my doubts to get a more accurate picture of the world around me. The Pharisees, they were great weeders. So was Saul before he became Paul, holding the cloaks of those who stoned Stephen. If Paul had been weeded out in deserved retaliation for his murderous weeding activities of Christians, we'd be missing 1/3 of the New Testament. Perhaps a weed can be an unexploited resource. Dandelions were imported to North America as an early food crop to help folks avoid scurvy. Forget the grass. Make your lawn 600 square feet of vitamin C. The world has a real problem with landmines. First, we used metal detectors and probes. You could clear about 2 square meters a day, slowly, if you were lucky. Then they started making landmines with plastic casings, so metal detectors didn't work anymore. Dogs were trained to sniff out nitrogen dioxide and sulfur, chemical components of explosives. Saved a lot of people. Lost a lot of great dogs. Then someone noticed that the thale cress weed, Arabidopsis thaliana, turns red in soil with nitrogen dioxide and sulfur. It works. Plant the weed seed. Now you see where the landmine is, disarm it, pull the weed, and use it for salad. Vini, vidi, vici insalata. That's what Julius Caesar really said concerning his eponymous salad, his military and gastronomic exploits. I came, I saw, I conquered. Salad. So I'm willing to suspend judgment for a moment and allow the possibility that a perceived weed might be useful, perhaps even beneficial. Let it go. God's on the job here. Our first instinct is to blame someone or something else for a problem, focus on that, trying to uproot it. The servant's first inclination is to pull the weeds immediately. It's an age-old push to get rid of tension instead of learning how to live in it. Let it go is hard advice to follow when we start experiencing things we don't like and would like to resolve them quickly. It's the same panic the servants of the parable felt. To their credit, they engaged the owner of the field in a dialogue. They talked it over with the boss. They strategized together. They acted responsibly and not unilaterally. They didn't assume the role of the final arbiter, who is, of course, God, the owner of the field. And Jesus advises, stay cool, don't panic, let it go. If you don't, it might put the whole field in jeopardy. Do the gospel where you can do it, and quit spending time zeroing in on problems that God's going to have to handle anyway. Life is full of weeds. We can't avoid them. A good strategy is to live in forbearance with them until the future path forward becomes more clear. Let it go. Give God the gift of time. He will sort it out. Good and evil usually inhabit the same field, the same community, the same individuals at the same time. The world's complicated. There aren't any perfect good guys, and there aren't any perfectly bad guys. Mount a dedicated campaign to ruthlessly get rid of perceived problems, and you'll abolish everybody. God, do you want us to go ahead and pull up all the weeds? No. Be cooperative and curious, not contentious. The mystery and wonder of God's kingdom is in charge and working perfectly. It is planted, sprouted, and bearing fruit. All the evil in the world can't lift a finger against it. Let it go. Amen.